As the tectonic plates of global power continue to shift, the relationship between the United States and China has emerged as one of the defining geopolitical dynamics of our time. While the two nations have long been economic and strategic rivals, the escalating tensions and growing mistrust have raised alarming questions about the potential for a catastrophic military confrontation, one that could potentially escalate into a nuclear exchange. This sobering prospect has captured the attention of policymakers, analysts, and scholars alike, each offering their unique perspectives on the factors that could draw these two superpowers into a nuclear conflict. From the complex web of strategic interests and territorial disputes to the underlying currents of ideological differences and great power competition, the narratives surrounding this existential threat are as diverse as they are consequential. Perhaps no issue looms larger in the US-China dynamic than the long-standing dispute over Taiwan's sovereignty. For decades, the island nation has been a source of contention, with Beijing asserting its claim over the territory and the United States maintaining a policy of strategic ambiguity while providing military support to Taiwan. In the eyes of many analysts, Taiwan represents the most likely flashpoint for a potential military confrontation between the two powers. As the Brookings Institution's Michael E. O'Hanlon argues, the Taiwan issue is the most dangerous potential trigger for a US-China military clash and perhaps even a nuclear war. This sentiment is echoed by scholars at the German Council on Foreign Relations, DGAP, who contend that the West, and in particular the EU and NATO, needs to invest in supporting Ukraine and its own security in the long term to deter Chinese aggression against Taiwan. The International Institute for Strategic Studies, ICSS, takes a more nuanced approach, suggesting that to maximize its chances of victory, high levels of attrition should be privileged over mobility and direct attack. This perspective underscores the potential for a protracted attritional conflict over Taiwan, one that could escalate beyond conventional warfare if either side perceives an existential threat to its core interests. At the heart of the debate surrounding a potential US-China nuclear conflict lies the intricate dance of deterrence and strategic calculations. As both nations continue to modernize and expand their nuclear arsenals, the delicate balance of power becomes increasingly precarious. In a recent opinion piece published by the Global Times, former editor-in-chief Hu Xijin articulated China's position, stating that China's security situation has changed, and the minimum size of the nuclear arsenal needed to defend China's national security has changed along with it, so it must be much more powerful than it was in the past. This stance reflects Beijing's determination to bolster its nuclear deterrent in response to perceived threats and shifting geopolitical dynamics. However, this posture has raised concerns within the United States and among its allies. As CIA Director Bill Burns warned, the U.S. believes that Chinese President Xi Jinping has ordered his military to be prepared to seize Taiwan by force if necessary. Such a move could potentially trigger a broader conflict, with the specter of nuclear escalation looming large. Beyond the specific flashpoints and strategic calculations, many analysts point to the deeper ideological divide and the broader context of great power competition as potential drivers of a nuclear confrontation between the U.S. and China. In the eyes of some observers, the clash between the liberal democratic values espoused by the United States and the authoritarian model championed by China represents an existential struggle over the future of the global order. As Rep. Mike Gallagher, RWIs, asserted during a House Select Committee hearing, this is an existential struggle over what life will look like in the 21st century, and the most fundamental freedoms are at stake. This perspective resonates with those who view the US-China rivalry through the lens of a new Cold War, one in which the two superpowers are vying for global influence and ideological dominance. In this context, the potential for miscalculation or escalation is heightened, as each side seeks to assert its power and protect its perceived interests. Amidst the chorus of concerns and dire warnings, there are also voices of caution and restraint, urging both sides to exercise prudence and pursue diplomatic solutions to diffuse tensions. In a Washington Post opinion piece, John K. Culver, a former CIA National Intelligence Officer for East Asia, expressed skepticism about the assumptions underlying many worst-case scenarios. It seems odd that war with China over Taiwan seems a comfortable assumption for so many when the US and NATO remain cautious about Russia's war in Ukraine precisely because of the perceived risk of nuclear escalation, Culver wrote. Similarly, some analysts argue that the rhetoric surrounding a potential US-China conflict often overlooks the shared interests and mutual deterrence that have historically prevented direct military confrontation between nuclear-armed powers. As the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace notes, the majority of those who support the special operation explain their position in terms of protecting the Russian-speaking population in Ukraine. This perspective suggests that both sides may be more inclined to pursue diplomatic solutions and avoid escalation, even in the face of heightened tensions. As the debate over the potential for a US-China nuclear conflict rages on, it is clear that the path forward will require a delicate balance of diplomacy, deterrence, and risk mitigation strategies. On the diplomatic front, many experts emphasize the need for sustained dialogue and confidence-building measures to reduce the risk of miscalculation and escalation. This could involve establishing clear lines of communication, setting mutually agreed-upon rules of engagement, and exploring avenues for cooperation on issues of shared concern, such as climate change and global health. At the same time, maintaining a credible deterrent and robust defensive capabilities is seen as essential to dissuading aggression and preserving the delicate balance of power. This may involve continued investment in advanced military technologies, strengthening alliances and security partnerships, and developing comprehensive contingency plans for potential conflict scenarios. Perhaps most crucially, there is a growing recognition of the need to mitigate the risks associated with a potential nuclear exchange. This could involve measures such as hardening critical infrastructure against electromagnetic pulse, EMP attacks, developing robust emergency response and recovery plans, and exploring arms control agreements to limit the proliferation of nuclear weapons and delivery systems. As the world grapples with the looming specter of a potential US-China nuclear conflict, it is clear that the stakes have never been higher. The narratives and perspectives surrounding this existential threat are as diverse as they are consequential, reflecting the complex web of strategic interests, ideological differences, and great power dynamics that underpin this pivotal geopolitical relationship. Yet amidst the cacophony of voices and the clash of competing narratives, there is a shared responsibility, a collective imperative to pursue peace, stability, and mutual understanding. For it is only through sustained diplomacy, open dialogue, and a commitment to risk mitigation that we can hope to navigate the treacherous waters of great power rivalry and avert the unthinkable consequences of a nuclear exchange. As we look to the future, it is incumbent upon leaders, policymakers, and citizens alike to embrace this responsibility, to reject the siren song of conflict and confrontation, and to chart a course towards a more peaceful and prosperous world. For in the end, the specter of nuclear conflict between the United States and China is not merely a geopolitical challenge, but an existential threat that transcends borders and ideologies, demanding a collective response rooted in wisdom, foresight, and an unwavering commitment to the preservation of human civilization.